Here is part 2 of the podcast episode with Vern Davenport of QHP Capital and Michael Curry of Lullwater. Part 1 focused a lot on the tools of the management systems, and part 2 contextualizes those tools and dives deep into the topics of working to create an awesome team.
A lot of entrepreneurial CEOs, founder CEOs, they get stuck in doing a lot of things that they don't enjoy, but there's no real time to stop and breathe and find a way out. And I think as long as you keep going, I would argue the longer that you go without pressing this pause and you're growing, I actually think you're making it harder on yourself. Because if the company's growing, but you don't have this alignment and clarity, it just means that you as a CEO are getting pulled in all of these different directions, and your job just becomes more painful. And there's, Jordan, we talked about another book, Buy Back Your Time, where the author Dan Martell kind of talks about the kind of the unconscious or subconscious pain point for founder CEOs, right? Where in many cases, CEOs either sabotage themselves or hit a ceiling and are afraid of growth because in their mind, they equate growth with my hands are in every decision, and growing this business 2x means 2x the pain because now I got to be in 2x the places because they basically project what I'm doing now with more people, more decisions, more fires versus finding a way to get that clarity of I want to 2x my business and I can't do it the way that I've been doing it. And this is kind of the step to get me to what I really intended to do with this business, which was use my talents, build a group of people to execute on a market opportunity and enjoy it. Right.
And just thinking about or reacting to your comments, it's not a timeout. It's really you're stepping into an accelerator. Name of the book is Accelerating Growth. Right? How do you go step into an accelerator, right? So that you can be spit out of that thing and you're growing to your full potential as opposed to taking a time out and a pause to kind of do a reset. This is really about taking great momentum and inserting some accelerant into it so that you can really capitalize on things. But it's change, right? And we all go through change. But when we're organized and aligned and we have a common vocabulary and we've got a very simple way of managing our progress against it, hopefully you're getting the best out of the people that you have. And just one thing that's a big philosophy of mine, I share it with my kids and I share it with my colleagues and anybody that asks me about how to evaluate a job opportunity, et cetera. I always say the same thing. And I think and it's proved to be correct. And this applies to the functional leaders and applies to the people that you want to have in your organization. And it's these 5 things, and it's in this order. The person's got to have a passion for the business. Got to be passionate about the job and passionate about the business because there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. And if I don't have a love for the job, then I'm going to have a real hard time getting through the challenging times. And there are going to be challenging times. So it's passion. Second thing, and particularly today, is contribution. When I graduated MBA school and 2 weeks later went to work for IBM, I went through a year of training before I did the first lick of work for the IBM company. Those days are over. You're hiring people today that next morning, they better be bringing something to the table because we don't have time to wait on them. So you got to bring a contribution, make a contribution to the company out of the gate. The third thing is culture. You can have passion and you can be making a contribution, but if you don't fit culturally, the organization is going to reject you or you're going to reject the organization. So you got to understand and you got to fit into and you got to contribute to the culture. The fourth one I think is also really big, and we don't spend enough time on this anywhere, but it is the development of that person. That person has got to develop more capability or have more successful experiences or whatever, but there's got to be an element of that person getting better as a person and as a professional as a result of doing this job. So if they have passion, they make a contribution, they fit culturally, and they're developing. The last element is compensation, and you never have to worry about that if you solve for the first 4. And I will tell you, when one of those 4 things have been violated from people that made a decision to go to work somewhere where those things didn't line up, it never works out. Never works out. So if if the founder or CEO is constraining those 4 elements in the people that they're trying to bring onto the team, it's not going to work out. Ultimately, and by the way, if it doesn't work out, that's when you're doing the reset. Boy, I hired a salesperson, but they didn't fit culturally. But it took us 9 months to figure that out. Now I got to hire another sales leader. It's going to take 9 months. I've lost 2 years. And in a private equity optic, that's half the life cycle of the investment almost, right? We don't have 2 years wait. We have to make.
So that's the 5-step framework for people to evaluate whether or not to take a job.
And you'd evaluate whether they're the right person for the job.
Mike, I'm sure you've hired a bunch of people, and we are currently trying to hire for mid-level and juniors, and we're trying to get better at that muscle or develop that muscle of how to hire. And I'm curious, Mike, how you have done it. And, one framework, maybe to kind of throw this in there, is kind of the get it, want it, capable of doing it framework from EOS in the book Traction. But Mike, curious to kind of hear big picture, how many people do you think you've hired in your career, and what have you evolved your framework to be?
So I've probably hired 40 people in our business over time. The early days I put out a lot of fires with my face. I think the get it, want it, and has the capability of doing it is really important. I think the best framework that I've seen is we took the get it, want it, has the capability framework, and we used it on our existing base, right? So we bought a company and we grew a lot through acquisition, and we kind of had to go back and really sit down and describe in detail what the jobs to be done were, because I think a lot of the businesses and a lot of the employees that we inherited through our acquisitions didn't have clarity in their roles. So lots of times when we asked the founder who is still with the business, a lot of their assessment of somebody's performance was very non-data driven. So they couldn't really tell you what the metrics were for the role. It would be more so it's a good person or I like them. So we over time, and obviously I think culture is critically important, but I think the culture of accountability is what we brought to our company. And there were behaviors that we observed, and we actually put those values and behaviors as a part of our hiring process. And I would say once we got the hang of that, where each role had a scorecard, and we made the functional people who do that job define what is a 5 out of 10, what's an 8 out of 10, what's a 10 out of 10 for that role, the clarity that gave people within the company as well as people that we were hiring. And I would sometimes observe some of those kind of end of process evaluation periods in seeing the transition from I like this person, I don't like this person, let's hire them, to that person didn't really score that highly on the cultural component. Their work experience didn't give me a lot of confidence that they were going to hit the scorecard of the definable and measurable activities. They weren't really able to speak very intelligently and very coherently and use data to support where they actually were able to contribute in these specific ways in their previous role. And hearing our own team, not me, not Keith, say, for these reasons, this person is not a fit, gave me a lot of confidence that we were starting to instill that discipline of how we find people. But to put a cap on it, I think hiring people is hard. And I think in the early days, we got a lot more wrong than we got right. But I think the last thing that I would say is, if I would kind of borrow a page from Vern's framework of a passion for the business, I think that our best hires did not have 3-page long resumes, but they had the aptitude and the attitude to do the job, and their contribution was almost immediate. And so I would tell you, it doesn't take 12 months to figure out whether somebody is the right fit. I think 90, 120 days, you will know if somebody is passionate about the business, is contributing, right? If they're being developed, raising their hand to take on projects. But we found a lot of success with people that have the attributes, not necessarily the experience. Because what I found is, in a lot of cases, the people with the experience didn't like the accountability. They're the expert, and so
Yeah.
they want to kind of work in the black box and like, leave me alone. I've done this 20 years, so I don't need to show up every month and talk through the 10 things that I committed to, because I've done this before, and just trust me. Whereas the people that I've found that have the attributes, they want the 10 things, because when they come to the operational review meeting, 9 out of 10 of their things are on green. So they're like, let's talk. And I'm happy to share with you. That's been my experience.
I'm laughing because it reminds me of a company I went into as chairman and CEO, and I had a very experienced COO who'd been in this particular industry his whole career, knew everybody. And as we implemented the management system, he fundamentally had a lot of the functional responsibility. And as we marched through the first 6 or 7, 8 months of the year, the guy could not execute against anything. So I started lumping off functions to give him more time to focus on specific functional areas. And ultimately came in and had the following conversation. As Vern, you're like the 10th or 11th CEO I've ever worked for. They've all said the very same thing. Going to hire the best people and give them their metrics and leave them alone. And you're the only one that's done it. And it's very uncomfortable for me. Which is to your point. He was great in a conference room talking about whatever you wanted to talk about and knew every customer. There's a value for that. But when the company's not performing and you need it to perform, you need folks that are able to execute against the parties of the business and deliver on those. And that wasn't the world that he was comfortable in. And he raised his hand, thank goodness, because we were not heading to a good place. But it's back to your point. Also played a little football, and I had a football coach in college that had this saying that said, "Potential gets your ass kicked." And it's back to your point about experience, right? And that's why that sequence of things are important to me as I look to trying to hire someone, because I kind of defer to the type of person that you described, Michael, which is they may not have all the experience, but they got that high desire, want to, right? So they got huge passion for it, and they can make it. It's not like they don't bring something to the table. They do. And that cultural part about having someone who's got all the experience wants to operate in their own box versus someone who's got relevant experience and is willing to work across the management team. That's where you're going to go figure all that out. And if there's someone who's already arrived and they know everything, there's nothing for them to develop, and they've got no aspirations, this is probably not going to be, a scale company environment is probably not that. They'd be better off as a consultant coming in and adding some value kind of episodically, as opposed to being a systemic part of how the company's going to grow and grow and scale. But the point of this conversation remains the same, which is if you get the right people, the job is really easy. If you don't have the right people, the job is really hard. So it is all about getting the people right so that you can liberate that CEO, that founder, to spend their time making the biggest impact, which is on strategy as to where the company has the potential to go, and kind of crafting that view and making an impact on that, as opposed to being in operational engagement because you don't have trust and confidence in your sales executive or your HR executive or your product development executive.
Vern,
sorry,
Vern, when have you been penny wise, pound foolish, maybe, in terms of, like, I went out with this JD for a VP at 125, when if I put it at 150, fast forward 12 months, that they 3x the business. And I'm speaking from like a bootstrap founders, like 125 for us at 14 people when you have a junior heavy team is a lot.
Yeah.
But I think back to when my wife co-CEO, co-founder, former lawyer Jing joined the business, it was a step function difference in the business when someone with that level of talent was brought in. And so how do you think about being penny wise and pound foolish when hiring?
Yeah, I wish I had like a super clear binary answer for that. But I think this comes into the art of management and judgment, right? Where you're going to have to make that the financial realities don't support the ambition that you have, but if you brought that person in, and sometimes you can lean into that win and take that chance and work out, and sometimes it won't. So I don't have a really good answer for you. But what I will say is we typically, as business people, we typically wait too long on people, and we typically don't invest, to your point, lean into the win as often or as much as we should, because again, if we can get the right people in, the job gets really easy. So for us, this is a real challenge for us at QHP, and fortunately we were able to hire a talent executive working for me whose job is the following: help that founder understand the reality of the transition into a scale company, and are they up for that journey, because their cheese is going to move significantly. And if they're not, they're better off declaring now and allowing us to go hire a CEO who is adept at what's going to be required, and allow us to maximize your talent in science or in sales or whatever the case may be, or somewhere else, right? So, and then help us accelerate the management team hiring, so that the sooner we get the right team, and then the successful deployment of the management system. And then the third element is having that team work really well together, because the management teams of our portfolio in the early days are made up of three constituencies: the CEO and the legacy leaders, people that we brought in, typically where QHP's had a relationship, like we're always bringing in a CFO, probably bringing in a head of sales. We're going to get that from our network. So there's the little perception that they're our people, and the concerned perceptions that the legacy folks would have against the people. And then there's people that have been promoted from within the organization that are now sitting at the table with the founders and the legacy leaders and these new executives. So there's three different types of people, and we've got to get those three different types of leaders working together as one body. So Ricky Turner's joined our team to do those three things so that we can accelerate getting the people right. But the answer to your question is really hard. And I would say for us, areas where we lean into the wind is we have to get sales right. So if I had a sales leader at X price, but I could get the person who were highly probable will knock it out of the park, I'd lean into that win. And the reason why is because we make a mistake there in growth companies, the new person coming in is going to evaluate their talent, most likely change their talent, then they're going to build a pipeline, and it sets us back 2 years. So I think you got to look at all the dimensionality of the role and the talent and the cost and the trade-offs and the exposures to be able to make the decision as to whether you go pay more now and take the risk on that, or you can take the risk on hiring a lower qualified person. So it's all of that stuff. But being able to get the people right as soon as you possibly can is a secret sauce to success.
Jordan, one of the things just to build on what Vern was saying, and given the context of kind of your business and it's growing and it may be smaller than some of the businesses that Vern buys, one of the things that we've embraced is kind of thinking about Moneyball. And in the context of, I think, thinking about the management system, and if I'm going from here to there, right, what are the most critical dependencies? And I think Vern hit the nail on the head. That's probably where I would start. But I would think about, you can't get all of the people that you want day one, but I would start to think about, once you've laid out how your business works and how it makes money and how it executes and what it needs most vitally to kind of catalyze or kickstart what that is, right? I would argue for you, Jordan, like having a world-class CFO today is not as important as accelerating growth or figuring out how to most efficiently process the work that you have, productize it, and continue to scale. So the way that I think about it is, you only have so many dollars. And so I'll just give you an example of what we did. When we decided that pricing was going to be one of the most important levers in our business as we grew and scaled. We looked at the jobs to be done, and we looked at the existing capacity and capability to execute on pricing. And what we said was M&A was going to be our first kind of value lever. Pricing was going to be second, organic, and then kind of technology improvements to improve efficiency of our technical staff. And when we looked at the business that we had and we mapped out how we do business, pricing was our second value lever, but pricing was being done by our administrative staff at 4:45 on Fridays. And so what we said was, that doesn't make sense. There's a mismatch. So if we're going to get from here to here in a private equity hold, right, and I have finite dollars, I'm going to put more dollars on buttressing my second most important value lever, because if I hit that lever, it could unlock growth, which then allows me to play more Moneyball because I have a bigger budget to do what I need to do. So that's what we did. We found somebody. That person, the return on investment of the pricing team at our company is insane. It's paid for itself many times over. But I think thinking about that from two, and what are the key things that need to happen to get you to where you want to go. And I would say, with the limited dollars I have, I want to pay up for the critical dependencies. And if I get those right, then I have more dollars to then support the support functions and all the other things that I need to do to grow the business. I think one of the big things, Vern, is it sounds like you still enjoy this stuff. And I think that one of our main goals in designing Lullwater is, going back to your point on what you look for in a job fit, is passion for what you're doing. And I think really rolling up our sleeves and spending that time with those management teams and those companies, and there's a there and you can see it. One of the things that I think Keith and I enjoy, and I'm sure you've seen it in your own career and in the career of your portcos, is there's also a people component of seeing people along that from to journey. And just like when people ask me, hey, you guys started from a little business in the outskirts of Baltimore, and like you've grown and now you're in all these places, like what do you enjoy most about that journey? It's people like Nina, who started off as somebody we hired on Craigslist as a part-time admin, who made it all the way to the director of HR for a company, and then because of all of her success found an even greater opportunity. And I was super thrilled for her to leave. Obviously, we will, we'll miss her, but being able to articulate a vision and see something that not only achieves the financial objectives, but also takes the right people who have the right attitude and give them an opportunity that they may not otherwise have. And to look back in that 5 years and go, holy smoke, when he got here, he was a couple years out of college, didn't know his ass from his elbow, and now that guy is a young executive who has seen parts of the business and has raised his hand. Like, that is truly gratifying. And anything that we decide to do has to give us some element of that, because that's something as a part of our roles that we want to create for ourselves that we actually get a lot of joy out of. And we don't want to get so far removed that we don't get to see that or participate in some way in that process of not only the transformation of the business, but for the right people seeing that transformation in people.
Yeah, I got 2 or 3 stories there, and I'll, if Jordan will allow me the time, I'll kind of tell them, because I think the point that you're making is really good. First of all, I do, so I appreciate you saying it. I do. I can't think about what I would do if I would retire, because I enjoy this very, very much. I enjoy my partners. I enjoy the firm that we're building. I love the people that we're working with, and more importantly, I love the impact that we're having on those companies and the companies are having on the markets that they're serving. So this is like, it's just, it couldn't be more fun for, kind of what I want to do. I worked in my early days at IBM, and I had the pleasure of working for the best executive I've ever worked for, a guy by the name of Woody Stoke, who was a branch manager in Norfolk, Virginia. And Woody's reputation was the best people in the business wanted to work for him. And you went to work for him, and you either left IBM in a very short period of time, or you got promoted in a very short period of time. And it was truly the first line management job was the job. But he attracted the best. The peer group I had when I worked for Woody, or some of it's still my fast friends today. But Woody didn't work very hard. He spent all of his time thinking about what he was going to tell me the next morning when I came to the office, because I was the guy working hard and my peers were the ones working hard. He spent all of his time thinking about how he was going to coach me. And he spent a ton of time coaching me. And he didn't do it directly. He had a different strategy than most about how he did. He told a lot of stories, spent a lot of time, etc. But he was coaching everybody, which is why he could sort through pretty quickly those that had a potential to continue to grow in the IBM company and climb the corporate ladder, and those that wouldn't. So the environment that he created was an environment where he attracted the very best. So his teams were really, really good. The people that he was really, really good. They wanted to work for him because you knew if you did a good job there, you could continue to climb the ladder. So the point of that was his business was very successful, not because of him, but because of the people that he attracted.
When you think about what you're building together with Keith on Lullwater or with partnering with the portfolio companies, what are some of the key questions or key takeaways that you have from this?
Having passion and attracting passionate people to what you do matters. And if I think Vern's top 5 of, passion and contribution and culture and development and kind of compensation last resonates a lot with me. I think that a lot of thinking and a lot of management thinking is to lead with dollars. But if you don't have the top 4 and those top 4 needs are not being met, throwing dollars at the problem is not going to get the right people on the bus that you need. But if you have the right people on the bus and there's clarity on where we're going and we're hitting on all cylinders, you as a leader should be thrilled to bonus people out and get people stock options. I mean, that means it's working, right? That's not right. That means that we're making a really big pie that the people who are contributing get to benefit from. And then I think the last thing I took from this conversation is it's a journey, and it's not a straight line, and there are going to be a lot of ups and downs. But if you have the right people and the right people have the right passion about the right mission, you can get there. And it doesn't have to be landing rockets with chopsticks, but people on a good team and a mission that they can get behind is meaningful work and a meaningful life. And I think a lot, the last thought that comes to mind is I think of all of the companies that don't have this level of clarity of why we exist and where we're going, and just a lot of wasted talent and a lot of wasted potential, and lots of people with lots of great ideas and capability just drowning in organizations that are never going to hit that stride and be what they could be. And the more of these conversations and the more people that have access to these tools, I think, yes, there's a financial component, but I think the more companies that can embrace tools like the management system, I think the more people that you can help give more meaningful work and kind of solve or begin to solve this malaise where just lots of people dislike getting up to go to work in the morning and have kind of resigned themselves to the drudgery that is working in organizations that don't have a lot of the things that the management system has. And I think if in some small way, like Lullwater can take some of these learnings and put them inside some businesses and help some people realize their potential, that has value.